When packing for a class trip to Hualien in Taiwan, I made sure to include the essentials: my toothbrush, extra socks, a light jacket, and the cloak of grief I had been wearing since the passing of my grandmother and my aunt the semester before. What I didn't include was a swimsuit. I didn't know that we would be reaching our final destination of an indigenous community by rafting down a cobra-infested river. Being a daughter of the desert, I was totally out of my element. By the time we reached the village, I was sunburnt and sullen, and just looking for a place to escape and sit with my feelings. Nightfall came shortly after our arrival and brought with it the chorus of insects from the jungle. The cacophony of life just out of sight stirred me, and I wasn't ready to retire to the bamboo hut where all 16 of us, students and staff included, would be spending the night. I decided to take a walk in the darkness and find the pagoda that overlooked the river. I wanted to clear my mind and to have some peace, but soon I found that in the darkness, thousands of snails had converged on the dark path. Each footstep found a crunch, and no matter how delicately I stepped, I would still find another snail beneath my foot. I knew that this village, they believed in animism, and that each creature has a soul or a spirit, and each crunch just made me feel heavier and heavier with the guilt that I had taken a life from this world. Thankfully, I soon found the pagoda and found myself sitting on a balcony, hearing the rustling of the leaves and the roaring of the river below me. I sat silently in reflection, thinking about the loved ones that I had lost in the past few years and how their lights had been distinguished from my life, thinking that I was more alone than I had been before, and that my community, my family, the people I loved, and those that loved me were disappearing. Those thoughts turned to sobs, and soon I found myself heaving with the heaviness of the day's events and the grief I carried on my shoulders for the past few years. Mother Nature heard my cries and opened her skies, unleashing a magnificent downpour that matched the cadence of my sorrows. I sat above the river and cried, watching the bats dance around me, trying to catch the moths that were attracted to my flashlight, listening to the churning of the river and the pounding of the rain falling around me, when I felt like I would never be whole again. My grief took over, and in that moment, alone in the dark, in a land where I had no ties, where I didn't know which way was up or down, where all I could see was the water around me, and all I could hear was the sounds of my sobbing. I felt the earth tremble, a quick shudder and a shake, but enough to make me take pause and think, was that an earthquake? Was that just a small shock? Would there be more? I decided that to be safe, I should go back to the village, that I should go back and find my friends and see if anybody else had felt the earthquake. By chance, the rain had mostly stopped at that point, and it was just a small trickle of water now falling from the sky. I more carefully made my way back down the dark path, shining my flashlight closer so that I could avoid any snails that I encountered. When I got back to our hut, I realized that most people had gone to bed, but a few of my friends were sitting outside, playing cards, laughing and having a good time. I walked up to them and asked them if they had felt the earthquake that just happened. They looked up at me quizzically and said, What earthquake? I was confused, but shook it off as just a hysteria-induced hallucination and went and sat with my friends and played cards and eventually went to bed in the bamboo room where all 16 of us were sleeping that night. In retrospect, I look back on that night as a turning point in my life and in my grieving process. I realized that night that the earth trembling, the earthquake that only I felt, was a sign that I needed to move past this unrelentless sorrow and look towards this new community that I had found, this new group of people that loved me and people that I loved, this supportive community of joyful, beautiful, energetic people who had nothing but the best wishes for this world and nothing but love for their friends and family. And I realized that I found a new family, that my family was growing, and even though we lose loved ones along the way, there are always those people we can look towards. I feel so fortunate that those people are my global family and that I've been able to share this amazing growth opportunity with such a compassionate community.